We're live on YouTube.
Thank you. Everybody ready? This is the 2-minute warning. Are we missing anybody? Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. To make this meeting as accessible as possible, closed captioning is available. If you're on Zoom, click the closed captioning button to turn the captions on or off. Ms. Fultz, do we have a quorum today?
I believe we do, and because we are meeting remotely, I will call the roll to make sure that we have a quorum and that the minutes accurately reflect today's participants. Also, in that we account for all alternates in the event any commissioner has connectivity issues or is not in attendance. An alternate will participate in the public meeting to reach a quorum if needed, and if one or both members from that jurisdiction are absent. When I call your name, please answer with present. Chair Hart.
Present.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Present.
Commissioner Bob. Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Present.
Commissioner Hull.
Present.
Commissioner Rush.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Lobby.
Present.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners or alternate commissioners with us this afternoon? I think that was everybody. Chair Hart, we have a quorum and we have enough members to form that quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. We will start today with our safety message from the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission Emergency Management Specialist, Richard David. Mr. David?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Here are some few summertime safety tips as the weather starts to warm up. Stretch and warm up before exercising and start slowly to ease back into your routine. Make sure you hydrate and that you use sunscreen to protect your skin with light clothing and hats when the sun is at its peak. If you go swimming, make sure there are lifeguards or others looking out for you before you get in. And always have a life vest if you're boating. Regardless of your activities, continue to follow the appropriate COVID-19 precautions that still exist. And keep an eye on friends and family who have a difficult past year. We at the WMSC want you to safely enjoy your summer as we as a region and a country start to get back into somewhat of a new normal. Stay healthy, stay informed, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar-Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes were posted for your review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I move approval of the April 13th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bob has seconded the motion. I will ask our General Counsel, Allison Fultz, to conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Bob.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approved.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approved.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farrar-Dyke. Next on our agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings, and we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If you would, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and we will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I would also remind everyone, including those of you who are watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. I will pause now to see if we have any public comments.
No, Chair Hart, I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hogan. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my brief remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities, consideration of several final safety event investigation reports, an update on some corrective action plans and audits, consideration of the WMSC's fiscal year 2022 budget, and other resolutions. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Hart. Before I get to some other updates, I do want to note that the investigation reports before the commission today cover some of the most significant Metro Rail safety events of 2020. The July 7th Silver Spring derailment and the two 6000 series train pull-aparts that occurred on the Red Line last fall. The investigations into these events and related inspection, audit, and other oversight work have identified areas in which Metro Rail must make important safety improvements to reduce the risk of similar events recurring in the future. The team will present more specifics later in today's meeting. We continue to investigate other events, including the March 26 runaway train. The post-event debrief with first responders for that event was held on April 23rd. The Wmsc has required Metro Rail to hold these post-incident debriefs after significant safety events to identify areas for improvement and areas that worked well during the emergency response. These results are captured and addressed during the investigation process. I would like to highlight that our investigations program manager has worked closely with his counterparts at Metro Rail Safety Department to continually improve investigations and investigation reports. In future meetings, you can expect to see more details related to analysis of probable cause, specific links to corrective actions, and improved data about fatigue. These improvements will take some time to implement, so some reports that are being finalized now will come to you with incremental changes until the improvements have been fully implemented. The point of safety investigations, of course, is to learn from when things go wrong and to ensure that these lessons learned are actually implemented in a lasting way. The most recent review of these investigation-related corrective actions was completed last month, and WMATA Safety Department has followed up with responsible departments on each of those items that were part of that review. WMATA recently made it more difficult for its internal safety investigators to access closed-circuit television recordings required for their work. This is slowing some investigative work and creating challenges for other investigations or reviews. The WMSC also requires direct access to those CCTV feeds as specified in the WMSC Compact. The WMSC has attempted to work collaboratively with Metro Rail to gain access to the CCTV system to monitor and improve safety, but we may need to take action to require this access. Related to audits and corrective action plans, last week the WMSC published our automatic train control and signals audit. The audit included a comprehensive look at the ATC system, which provides critical safety protection for train movement and roadway workers. The audit included 16 findings related to inadequate safety training, efforts to restore automatic train operation outside of the safety certification process, incomplete maintenance, tools that have not undergone safety reviews, poor interdepartmental coordination, and gaps in other training, planning, parts, and procedures. Metro Rail now has 45 days from the publication of the audit to submit proposed corrective action plans. In other work, our audits of fitness for duty and rail cars are concluding. Related to other safety findings, I would like to highlight the progress that Metro Rail has made in some areas following the findings that we issued last month related to radio communication coverage gaps in and around rail yards and a lack of rules for the movement of vehicles in dark territory. Our work led to some immediate adjustments to improve radio coverage outside the West Falls Church Yard. This is an issue that was only addressed as a result and following our safety oversight. Metro Rail is still developing more complete corrective action plans to address the two findings. We are awaiting a revised corrective action plan proposal from WMATA related to deficiencies in the intrusion detection warning system that were identified following a collision near Union Station. Our work also continues to drive changes in the Rail Operations Control Center. The team remains in close contact with the ROC team regarding the ongoing safety changes and procedural improvements. As Metro Rail prepares a new round of long-term shutdowns for capital improvements, I also want to remind you that these areas remain under our safety oversight throughout that process, as specified in the WMSC Compact. Metro Rail terms some of these long-term shutdown areas authorized construction sites, where the WMSC has made clear that all of our program standard requirements and WMATA's safety commitments continue to apply, including those requirements related to safety and investigations. For example, On May 11th, a small work cart rolled out of control down the tracks for more than 3,000 feet on the Blue and Silver lines in Maryland. This required a notification to us, and we gathered additional information related to this event, which took place near Addison Road and Capitol Heights stations. The WMSC team is reviewing information related to WMATA's service restoration and construction safety procedures for Arlington Cemetery and Addison Road stations prior to their scheduled reopening next Monday. We will also continue to conduct ongoing safety oversight work that will shut down the green and yellow lines north of Fort Totten Station starting next week. Following your approval last month of the revised program standard that goes into effect June 1st, WMSC staff have conducted internal orientations, reviews, and trainings to ensure that we're fully prepared and aligned with the program standard requirements for Metro Rail starting June 1st. As we had planned, the separate revised dispute resolution process is on your agenda for today. For the record, I'd also like to note that in accordance with the WMSC Conflicts of Interest policy, all commissioners and alternate commissioners have submitted their annual safety affirmation that they do not have any conflicts of interest and have no role with WMATA. Finally, I have one WMSC staff announcement to share. Will Haynes has joined our staff earlier this month as our first IT program manager. He comes to us after more than a decade of service on Capitol Hill. We welcome him, and we're glad to have his expertise on our staff. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, for those updates, and welcome Mr. Haynes to the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to safety event investigations. We have one investigation report today covering a situation where an individual placed themselves in the path of a train. By FTA regulations, this is classified as an accident that requires investigation, and we did. Does any commissioner wish to ask questions about this report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt an investigation report Whiskey 0078?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote. Ms. Fultz?
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approved.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approved.
Thank you very much. The report is approved.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. Next on our agenda is safety investigations. Our operations vehicle and emergency management experts, Bruce Walker, Manuel Lopez, and Richard David, will present the first reports. These reports, Whiskey 0079 and Whiskey 0080, are separate investigation reports, but both relate to similar 6000 series pull-apart events that occurred last fall. Therefore, I will ask them to present these two reports together. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. As you noted, this presentation of investigation reports Whiskey 0079 and Whiskey 0080 cover the 6000 series train pull-aparts that occurred on the Red Line on October 9th and November 20th, 2020. The investigation identified safety issues with the 6000 series couplers and WMATA's overhaul process, the operational response, and the emergency response. Vehicle experts Manuel Lopez and emergency preparedness specialist Richard David will each present those aspects of the report. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Bruce. The direct cause of both pull-aparts were loose fasteners in parts of the coupler's assembly. These bolts and other pieces were not properly tightened. The root causes that led to this included Metro lack of an incomplete inspection, maintenance, and overhaul procedures, a failure to follow review and approval processes, and a failure to fully learn from prior events to implement systematic changes and reviews. In 2018, before the WMSC had oversight of Metro, a similar event occurred involving a 6000 series train near McLean Station. Unlike these two events, the event in 2018 in 2018 involved a 6000 series Mary Pair pulling apart. Richard?
Our investigation and the post-event debriefs that we require Metro Rail to hold with first responders identified areas in need of improvement, particularly in relation to the October 9th pull apart. I will go into further detail later in the slide.
Thank you, Mr. David. I was on the scene at both events and observed the nature of the scene, the emergency response, and the immediate investigative steps. This table provides some of the details on the two events. On October 9th at 12:18 p.m., an outbound Red Line train had just departed Union Station and separated into two parts just after the front of the train exited the tunnel towards the Noma Gallaudet station. The train operator reported that train 108 entered automatic emergency braking, known as brakes in emergency. A train operator passing on the adjacent track reported to the Rail Operations Control Center that the train had separated into two sections. A few minutes later, the train operator of train 108 identified that the train display read 2 cars rather than 8 cars. The front 2 cars were separated from the trailing 6 cars. On November 24th at 1:02 p.m., a Red Line train departing Glenmont Station separated into 2 4-car sections as it crossed through the interlocking to proceed toward Wheaton. The train operator reported brakes in emergency, and a rail supervisor who happened to be on the train walked back and identified that the train had separated. The supervisor immediately reported the separation to the Rail Operations Control Center. In both events, the 911 calls from the ROCC were not clear about what emergency response was needed and why. On October 9th, not all Metro personnel who were needed at the incident command post reported there. Particularly, this appeared to be due to an unclear communication about the location of the command post that Metro personnel, not as familiar with the area as DC Fire and EMS, did not understand. The DC Fire and EMS established the command post on the Hopscotch Bridge. This is the bridge that carries H Street behind Union Station, but not all Metro personnel understood where that was. Metro Transit Police also did not respond to the train location, but remained on the periphery of the scene. On November 24th, the emergency response protocols on scene were followed more closely. In the first event on October 9th, Metro Rail did not evacuate customers in a timely fashion. Metro Rail also did not move the 6-car portion of the train back to the Union Station platform in a timely fashion, even though it had been confirmed that it could be moved safely to avoid an evacuation. Due to both comfort and COVID concerns, customers had opened the side emergency doors of the train as the response dragged on, and there were some customer disputes. When the evacuation did occur, Metro personnel and first responders evacuated the riders through the side emergency doors rather than the bulkhead doors at the end of the cars as specified in Metro Rail procedures. The Rail Operations Control Center received confirmation that all passengers were evacuated nearly 2 hours after the train separated. The evacuation on November 24th was timely and included the use of the bulkhead doors. In both evacuations, warning strobe and alarm devices, commonly known as WSADs, were properly placed to verify that power was down prior to and during the evacuation. However, on October 9th, Metro Rail did not rack out the breakers as specified in Metro Rail's procedure to provide an additional layer of protection against power being restored while members of the public were on the roadway. Following the October 9th event, the Washington Metro Safety Commission identified that Metro Rail did not follow chain of custody procedures related to the investigation. Individuals under the Chief Mechanical Officer rail reporting structure, which includes car engineering and car maintenance, manipulated fasteners outside of the safety event process. The WMSC issued findings on October 20th requiring Metro Rail to develop a corrective action plan to ensure the integrity of safety investigations. Metro Rail is in the process of implementing this CAP. Mr. Lopez, please.
Thanks, Bruce. I participated in the reviews of the coupler assemblies in each of these events. In the October 9th event, the buffer tube and gland nut were identified as improperly torqued. Omara told the WMSC that it will inspect all 6000 series couplers over the following days, and later informed the WMSC that those inspections identified 9 cars with incorrect bolts and other hardware, a problem similar to the direct cause of the 2018 McLean pull apart, and 4 cars with at least one gland nut thread showing. Following the November 24th event, the review was even more extensive. Metrorail followed the proper chain of custody for evidence. The copper head, draft bar, pinch bolt, or clamping bolt, and the bolts holding the guide plate were all improperly torqued. During this event, it became clear that WMATA's October inspection had only included specific fasteners and not all fasteners on the couplers. Further review, including input from the coupler manufacturer Delner, demonstrated that WMATA's coupler overhaul and maintenance procedures were incomplete, and that Metrorail did not have specific tools required to carry these out. Metrorail said Delner never informed Metro that go, no-go gauges were required for the threads on the draft bar and coupler heads. Regardless, Metrorail did not have procedures to sufficiently tighten those pieces together during overhaul work. Metrorail did not have a comprehensive program in place, was not using the correct tools or procedures, and did not have oversight of the parts used in the overhaul process. The 6000 series cars are out of service indefinitely. Next slide. These photos demonstrate aspects of the scenes and the couplers following the pull aparts. As part of the corrective actions for these pull aparts, Metrorail is developing new overhaul procedures, procuring the required tools, and determining the best path to examine and properly rebuild the couplers. Metrorail may have the manufacturer do the work or may determine that it will do the work itself. Corrective actions also include ensuring proper torque values and adhesives are used and is revising inspection procedures. WMSC is getting updates from WMATA on their plans for these couplers and other procedures at least every 2 weeks. And Metrorail plans to provide further specifics on their latest specific on the latest coupler overhaul plans and documentation later this week or early next week. I will also note that as specifying our October 1st audit schedule, we're in the midst of our rail car or revenue vehicles audit. In this work, we're reviewing a broader range of Metrorail work on rail cars. We expect to complete the draft of this report in coming weeks.
Ms. Hogan, if you could mute everyone who's not currently participating and speaking, I'd sure appreciate it.
Coming weeks, which will lead to issuing this report this summer following WMATA's technical review. Richard?
I'd like to provide some more detail on the emergency preparedness and response aspect of this investigation. In both events, the 911 dispatcher were not clear on the required response and the nature of the event. This deficiency in the ROCC led to some delay and confusion for the emergency response. Also contributing to those issues, WMATA had not adequately coordinated with jurisdictions to develop a standard response for a train separation event. A standard response for other events defines the type of resources such as fire trucks, ambulances, and supervisors who respond to a call. Metro Transit Police did not go into the disabled train on October 9th, which created complications for other WMATA staff on scene managing customers and de-escalating disputes. Operations departments also suggested that Metro Transit Police could better coordinate with them to help get rail supervisors or other personnel to the scene of an event when rail service is suspended. As Mr. Walker mentioned, the response on October 9th was not fully coordinated through the incident command post on the Hopscotch Bridge. The extended delay in getting customers off the roadway also indicates areas of Metrorail's emergency preparedness and response that require improvement. On November 24th, there were several aspects of the response that were handled much better. The train operator on that train and an experienced supervisor who happened to be on board helped the response go smoothly. That supervisor had also been on scene at the October 9th pull-apart and used that experience to make the November 24th response go more smoothly. Given the location of the November 24th event just outside an end of line station at Glenmont, the response location was much clearer and the incident command post was clearly identifiable. This contributed to improved communications at the incident command post. The fire liaison also communicated essential information throughout the event. However, the November 24th event also identified concerns with the emergency tunnel evacuation carts, also known as ETEC. The post-event debrief with first responders highlighted areas for improvement in maintenance, inspection, and communications about the status of these carts. On scene, the correct evacuation procedures were used to bring riders through the bulkhead doors for the evacuation. There were challenges to setting up the ladders at the end of one car due to the way the couplers remained attached. Metrorail and Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service personnel were able to make the adjustment to positioning of the ladders to make the ladders work. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you very much, Messrs. Walker, Lopez, and David. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for any of these three?
Chairman Hart, I have a couple questions.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear in the presentation that WMATA seems to be looking at the 90-minute evacuation, especially on the October 9th event. Certainly communications is very important with passengers that are stuck on a train. Can you tell me how long was it before the passengers were contacted by Washington Metro employee to let them know what was going on? Was it the full 90 minutes when they were evacuated, or did someone come and let them know the situation?
I can take that. So the incident started at 12:18. The operator was instructed to do a ground walk around. During the ground walk around, he noticed some smoldering rail ties and was instructed to take care of the rail ties. Within 15 minutes, around a little over 15 minutes, a supervisor showed up on the scene. 20 minutes, a second supervisor has showed up. So anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes, the second half of that train was updated. Those customers were updated with what was going on. The issue was, even for the next hour going into the incident, Brock was still trying to inquire about if the trains could be moved. There was not a plan. So after the supervisors got there, let's say 20 minutes after the incident started, they still were unable to really give any answers on the response, what was going to happen, as Rock was still trying to decide what the plan was going to be.
Okay, so that's very interesting. We've talked a lot about train separations, but even a train derailment can cause the disruption of communications between the two train halves and delays in evacuation. So, Mr. Quigley, as far as you're concerned, is WMATA taking steps to make sure that these evacuations and this communication with the passengers occur in a more timely manner?
Yes, speaking with Ed Donaldson, the Rock director, within 10 minutes of troubleshooting or trying to figure out if the train could even be moved, that's going to be the cutoff. After that, they're going to go get the customers, stop worrying about the train sitting there. The train can sit there, for an hour or 2 hours all day. The most important piece of everything would be getting the customers off to avoid, self-evacuations and bigger issues that might stem from that.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question probably for Mr. Lopez also. These two incidents occurred on 6,000 series cars with the Dellner coupler, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, then the couplers.
Are Dellner couplers used on any of the other series cars? I noticed that they looked at the procedures for the 2,000 and 3,000 series cars. Why do we think this issue may just be confined to the 6,000 cars? Shouldn't the rest of the fleet be looked at, or is it a different manufacturer?
It's the same manufacturer, but I think the issue here is the overhaul process, how the whole overhaul process was carried out, as far as making sure they had the proper tools, the proper documentation, the proper training. I think it was more isolated to this particular car, where they had a lot of mishaps as far as getting prepared and getting the overhaul program started, where a lot of times with not having the proper documentation. So the issue as far as this is isolated to just the 6,000 series as far as this problem. Moving forward, they are using a lot of these lessons learned here as far as moving forward, for example, into the 7,000 series car, using some of these current processes, like making sure the OEM or the original equipment manufacturer is involved in reviewing the documentation, making sure you have all the proper tools, make sure there's training, and then you go through a demonstration. So they are going to follow a more thorough approach as far as moving forward. But this mishap currently is only associated with the 6,000s.
And as far as you're concerned, that's a logical assumption that this is only a problem with the 6,000s?
Based on all the information we have collected, it's logical that it's only 6,000. I think they looked at the other cars to see if the 2K, 3K, and 6K, to see if things could be interchangeable, but that was not feasible, at least at this time. At least it's still being investigated.
When the fleet inspections were done on the couplers, did that include any couplers beyond the 6,000 fleet? Do you know?
Just 6,000.
Just the 6,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Lobby. I had a lot of the same issues myself, especially regarding time. I know I personally would be very impatient in a hurry if I didn't at least hear from somebody on what's coming up. And also your questions about the 6,000 series versus the others. I'd be interested if anybody knows about industry-wide experience, or is it apples and apples, or is there any basis to compare what's happening elsewhere in the industry regarding pull-aparts? What kind of cars they're happening on?
Oh, I don't know. As far as they're looking at the other series to see if there was any commonalities where the equipment could be interchangeable. But that's still that investigation is still ongoing. But in the initial thinking is that they're different. So you can't really do any kind of interchanges as far as within our fleet. As far as all the fleets, I don't have any information on whether this problem is happening somewhere else. But I can look into it.
So do I understand correctly that once they pull apart, they stop automatically because they lose brake pressure? Is that how that works?
Yes, they get into the emergency brake kicks in and they stop.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for any of these three? Okay, seeing none, I think unless you tell me different, General Counsel Fultz, I'll take these together. Is there a motion to adopt investigation reports Whiskey 0079 and Whiskey 0080?
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Any second? Commissioner Bob second. So moved and seconded. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded revote.
Thanks very much. Chairman Hart.
Approve both.
Yes, and we have these teed up to be approved together. So that's, that is the motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approved.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The report is approved. Or both reports are approved.
Thank you, Ms. Foltz. Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley will present our next report. Mr. Quigley?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0081 involves the July 7th, 2020 derailment just outside of Silver Spring Station. Red Line train 108 head northbound toward Glenmont derailed at 11:20 a.m. The train operator moved the train past a red signal at the end of the platform seconds after the Rail Operations Control Center sent a command to realign the switch to a normal position for a straight-through move. The train operator did not have permission to pass the red signal. The switch moved under the train. The first car followed the original position of the switch and entered the pocket track toward train 880. The second car derailed. The train operator was able to pass the red signal without any redundant protection because the train had lost speed commands as it entered the station platform. The train operator activated stop and proceed mode to service the station. However, after closing the doors, the train operator returned to the operating console and immediately proceeded without verifying the signal aspect or rail alignment. Metrorail's stop and proceed software does not reset until speed commands return or the train exceeds 15 miles an hour. The train operator had made the same trip several times earlier that day and had experienced a lunar or proceed signal at this location each time. The rock controller began the computer clicks required to realign the switch at 11:20 in 10 seconds. The train departed the platform about 2 seconds later, and the rock controller completed and sent that switch command 2 seconds after that. The switch began to move approximately 6 seconds after the rock command was sent. The switch completed the move 5 to 6 seconds after it began to throw. After the train derailed, all cars remained upright, but the first car was misaligned from the second car, blocking the bulkhead door between the two cars and preventing their use to evacuate the one passenger on the lead car. The riders in the rear 7 cars were able to walk back through the train and evacuate directly onto the platform. Vehicle systems data show that the train had accelerated to 15 miles per hour just before the derailment. This triggered automatic braking since the train remained in stop and proceed mode. The train was moving about 11.6 miles per hour at the time of the derailment as the switch was throwing under the train. The point of derailment was 83 feet from the signal, and the point for rest was 118 feet from the signal. The lead car stopped 240 feet from the end of the platform and did not contact train 880. The operator of train 880 reported the derailment over the radio, and the operator of train 108 then acknowledged that the train had derailed. The rock controllers immediately attempted to respond to these reports. However, the rock controller microphone used did not work. Ambient recordings in the rock demonstrate that proper attempts were made to transmit, but radio recordings show that those communications did not transmit. After the Wmsc identified this issue, the investigation found that the microphone problem had been identified on the prior rock shift, but that Metrorail did not send anyone to fix the issue. After the derailment, the microphone was replaced, but that replacement microphone also did not work and had to be replaced again. Rock controllers followed prior direction from rock management to remove automatic signal function and fleet signals like the one at Silver Spring when turnbacks were not occurring there. This meant that when the controller went to place a manual route for train 880, which required an alternate switch movement to enter the pocket track, the switch remained positioned towards the pocket track. The automatic mode that would have detected train 108's destination as Glenmont and automatically adjust the switch to normal was inactive. In manual, the controller must return the switch in the AIM system and manually direct the switch to return to the normal position. The controller had a heavy workload already that day due to flooding between Cleveland Park and Woodley Park stations and was not able to immediately restore the switch to its normal position when train 880 cleared the switch. As the controller commanded the switch to return to the normal position, train 108 departed Silver Spring Station. Had 108 not derailed, it could have collided head-on with train 880 in the pocket track. During the emergency response, controllers repeatedly received conflicting direction from management regarding service patterns and response. This was one part of Metrorail's failure to follow the incident management protocols. Reviews of recordings and other data demonstrate that these controllers handled the post-derailment response related to ongoing operations of other trains outside of the incident extremely well. During the derailment response, upper-level management pressed the controllers to restore normal service in the Woodley Park area where trains were single-tracking by that point in the morning. The controllers coordinated this to the best of their abilities, but this detracted from their focus on the derailment response. In addition to the rock controller communication failures, the fire liaison also could not communicate on the radio with first responders in the field during this event. Metrorail was using Office of Emergency Management employees to fill the role at the time, but had not provided training on how to do that. Regular uniformed fire liaison staffing resumed a few weeks later. Metrorail also did not have a backup phone that patches into the first responder radio system available in the rock at the time. The post-event debrief suggested this facility during a changeover. At the scene of the event, Metrorail personnel did not report to the incident command or staging area and instead crowded the platform. This event occurred during the WMSC's rock audit work. Many aspects of corrective actions are required under the WMSC's rock-related findings, including Metrorail's caps related to dysfunction in the rock during unplanned events and emergencies, repeated failures to address safety issues, inconsistent training, limited emergency drill experience, and a lack of training requirements for WMATA employees serving as the fire liaison. Specific corrective actions in this investigation include a review of the use of automatic signals, microphone upgrades, and the establishment of communications maintenance schedules, changes to the emergency management in the rock, and a commitment to improve train operator check rides and on-the-job training. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. That's a fascinating investigation, but I'm kind of confused because I didn't understand the chronology of events. It was a pretty complicated chronology. So tell me what done differently in the chronology of events would have prevented this car from overriding the switch and then having it change while the car was over it?
Good question. So the AIM system, you select a entry signal, and then you have to complete that route with an exit route. So in the process of selecting this route, that's when the train operator started to move. So after the command was sent to the wayside for the switch to move, the train had already passed the red signal. It's really just came down to really unfortunate timing. One thing that we are looking at is the stop and proceed. After you service a station, we are requesting that WMATA look into the stop and proceed software to be issued again. So any door cycle would issue a stop and proceed. The operator would therefore have to contact ROC because they don't have speed commands, which could have saved this event from happening.
I would just
So in this event, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I could just mention, I mean, while there are potential technical solutions that could reduce the likelihood to recur, I did want to point out that when the train operator completed the station work, when the train operator finished servicing the platform at Silver Spring Station, and the train operator, brought his head back in the cab, he did not have speed commands. He was facing a red signal, and the switch was misaligned for the move that he was intending to make. So there were indications to the train operator at the time that he did not have permission to move the train, yet the train operator moved the train toward the red signal and the misaligned switch in the absence of speed commands. So I don't want to gloss over that point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
so this incident took place almost 2 years ago. And so, what I'm trying to get my mind around is the corrective action that took place to avoid this prior to the WMSC involvement in its investigation. This was nearly 2 years ago. So
I do want to point out that the WMSC was involved in this at the moment that it happened and has been continually involved in this. At its root, this is a red signal overrun, and that's something that there have been a variety of caps issued and a great deal of corrective action has been applied over the years. But as a result of the specific circumstances in this accident, there are additional corrective actions that have arisen.
And this has only been 10 months, Commissioner Bob.
thank you.
So the two things, one is proceeding against the red signal. The other would be failing that, waiting longer, and that either one of those would have not had this happen. Do I understand that correctly?
I didn't understand that question, Chair Hart.
So either paying attention to the red signal until he had permission to proceed, or at least waiting longer before he proceeded, would either one of those have prevented, would this have happened if either one of those had taken place?
Well, yeah, obviously, the operator has to check lunar or signal, make sure that what the signal aspect is, check rail alignment, and again, see if they have speed commands to move the train. If they don't have any of those, they contact central control.
So was the signal red because the track ahead wasn't clear, because the switch was misaligned for the movement?
The signal was red because there was a train ahead of 108 that received the route into the pocket track at Silver Spring. Okay. So once that train cleared, the lockout dropped. It would still remain a red signal until the lockout dropped, which is a safety timing mechanism for the signal. So ROC can't set that signal until the lockout drops. So when the lockout dropped, Central set the route.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
The process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0081?
Also move.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush. I will now ask General Counsel, thank you for the motion and second. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Bob.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The report is approved.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fultz. We will now take up our next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Mr. Karunaratne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The WMSC continues to work hard to review, consider, and address the sizable number of WMATA submissions of CAP deliverables, extension requests, and closure requests. Metro Rail submitted a required CAP proposal related to gaps in the intrusion detection warning system on time. The WMSC provided comments requiring revisions early last week. As a reminder, this IDW CAP was initiated following a train collision with a fence near Union Station on February 11th this year. Separately, Metro Rail is required to submit proposed CAPs related to the findings on radio communication deficiencies in rail yards and vehicle movement in non-signalized territory in a few weeks. Those findings were based on WMSC inspections and other oversight work that confirmed significant radio communication challenges and procedural gaps in rail yards that pose safety risks related to vehicle and personal movement. This follows separate issues identified in the RMM audit published this winter. CAPs related to ATC audit that was published last week are due by late June. Ms. Samarasinghe will provide an additional review of those findings in a moment. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Chairman Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Karunaratne. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Karunaratne? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is audits. Ms. Samarasinghe.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We issued our automatic train control and signaling audit to WMATA last week. As with each of our audits, this report is based on an extensive set of interviews, data reviews, and document reviews. The audit team conducted this work in late 2020 and the winter of 2021. The audit identified some positive practices and a number of areas that require improvement. The 16 findings that the WMSC issued through this audit include that Metrorail has not adequately trained its ATC employees on safety procedures, and that multiple employees that were interviewed for this audit stated that they do not comply with safety procedures. Metrorail has continued efforts to return to automatic train operations without following its safety certification process. Metrorail is not conducting all inspections and maintenance required by its ATC manuals. Metrorail allows employees to use tools that have not gone through any safety review or approvals process. Metrorail does not have a standardized determination of which preventative maintenance work must be prioritized as safety critical. Additionally, departments responsible for ATC do not have a clear, documented, effective working relationship amongst themselves. WMATA does not have a standardized process to prioritize and advance ATC capital projects. Metrorail does not have documented ATC software standards, and there are training, planning, parts, and procurement deficiencies. And finally, some procedures do not match safety rules or what employees are being trained to do. Metro has a history in this area over the past 15 years and demonstrates the importance of vigilance in this area. The train control system at Metrorail is vital to the safe movement of all rail traffic on the Metrorail system. These findings must be addressed in a coordinated way to ensure lasting improvement. Metro has 45 days from the issuance of the audit to submit proposed caps. The WMSC will review these proposals carefully once they are transmitted to us. We continue to work on 2 other audits. The fitness for duty audit is nearing completion. That WMSC audit team has overcome some resistance from some parts of Metrorail. The rail car or revenue vehicle audit is also nearing completion. Our traction power audit is getting underway. Our team has begun reviewing documents that have been provided by WMATA. Interviews for this audit are scheduled for next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samarasinghe. That's quite a number of audits for the size of the staff that you have that's doing this audit. Kudos to you guys for being able to pull off such an amazing number of tasks as well as you do. So I appreciate that. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samarasinghe? Okay, hearing none, this is an information item, not a voting item. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is resolutions. Our first resolution today relates to the consideration of the WMSC's fiscal year 2022 budget. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, would you like to provide an overview for us for the budget?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The Finance and Operations Committee reviewed this final budget during our meeting on April 29th, and our committee recommends approval. This is the conclusion of a required months-long process that included development and distribution of the draft work plan and budget last fall, review, input, and sign-off from the jurisdictions. And the process now culminates in today's final approval vote. The fiscal year 2022 budget covers July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Dr. Meyer, did you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. I did want to say that we worked extremely hard to make sure that our next fiscal year's budget is right-sized for our current operations. This hard work led to a $600,000 lower budget for the coming fiscal year when compared with our current budget. This is intended to assist the jurisdictions in this challenging time while continuing to meet our staffing and oversight needs. To be clear, we do expect that additional needs may arise in future years based on areas that we identify in our continuous improvement process, but this budget allows us to continue our robust safety oversight program with the funding available today. This budget was completed following all provisions in the master funding agreement in coordination with Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. As you noted, this budget was submitted and reviewed by the Finance and Operations Committee, which has approved its submittal to the full commission today. This work plan sets forth the WMSC's financial plan for our upcoming fiscal year, which starts on July 1. It establishes an overall budget of just over $5 million for the WMSC, of which the largest share, of course, goes to pay salaries and benefits for the staff. I recommend that the commissioners approve WMSC fiscal year 2022 budget by adopting Resolution R 2021-07.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Let me first see if there are any questions from any of the commissioners. Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The motion carries and the budget is approved.
All right, thank you, Ms. Foltz, and thank you again to Dr. Meyer and especially to Commissioner Farrar Dyke and Commissioner Hull for the Finance and Operations Committee working through this and coming up with an austere budget in difficult times, but recognizing that we have to do what we have to do. So you guys have responded to that reality very well, and I appreciate that. We will now move on to our next resolution. Dr. Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC compact requires the WMSC to have a documented process to handle any dispute resolution or appeals that might arise during our safety oversight. Currently, this process is encompassed in an SOP that is part of our active program standard. Of course, we have a new program standard going into effect next month. Consequently, staff recommended readopting this dispute resolution process as a separate process that expands on what's in the updated program standard. And consequently, the staff urge you to adopt the resolution R 2021-08.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. So this would now be a process that would apply to the new program standard that doesn't come into effect until June 1st. Is that accurate?
That's correct, but as written, the new dispute resolution process would go into effect once adopted.
I see. Okay. So are there any questions for Dr. Meyer from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2201-08?
So move.
Okay, move for Commissioner Hull. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush. I will now ask General Counsel. Thank you for the motion and second. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The motion carries and the resolution R 2021-08 is approved.
Thank you, Ms. Foltz. That completes our business for today. As a reminder, before we leave, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. We expect to hold our next public meeting on June 29th, 2021. The meeting will again be held remotely via video conference. We look forward to seeing you then. Before we go, I'd like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting, the WMSC staff members who prepared and presented today, Dr. Meyer for his leadership in keeping WMSC's operations going aggressively apace without missing a step throughout the pandemic, and all the commissioners and our alternate for their engagement throughout the process. Thanks to all of you. It takes a village to make it work. Is there a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.